Considered one of the three most notorious arms dealers of all time, he lives lavishly, wears designer clothes, drives expensive cars, and lives in a castle in Marbella, Spain, but behind that is enough power to sustain an entire war. He has provided tens of thousands of weapons to separatist forces, terrorists, and international criminals. That person is Monzer al-Kassar. If Victor B is called the Merchant of Death, Monzer al-Kassar has a more beautiful name, the Prince of Marbella. Manfred Morstein, author of the book The Godfather of Terror, wrote, "With the Iraqi government, Kassar is the 26th most wanted person on the list of 41 people. The US Senate called him one of the world's biggest arms and drug traffickers, and John Kerry, the Democratic presidential candidate in 2004, affirmed that Monzer al-Kassar was a notorious terrorist. In 1980, Kassar's assets were estimated at about $26 billion, and he was considered one of the richest people in the world. So who is he and how did he manipulate the war? Let's find out through today's video. If you are a fan of crime movies and think that to be a boss, you must have a special background, not from the bottom of society, but also have to go through the storms of life and death and be trampled by society to be worthy, in reality, that is not necessarily the case. You would never believe that this is a notorious arms dealer, a boy with a silver spoon in his mouth. Born on July 25, 1935 in Al-Nabec, Syria, Monzer al-Kassar's father was a senior official in the Syrian government under President Hafez al-Assad. He served as Syria's first ambassador to India and then to Canada. Fluent in 5 languages, Monzer al-Kassar also holds a Yemeni and an Argentine passport in addition to his Syrian passport. In the late 1960s, Kassar studied law in Rome, Italy. There, he first encountered the law when he was involved in a car theft. But thanks to his father's political influence, Kassar did not have to go to jail. In 1970, he was arrested in Copenhagen, Denmark for marijuana trafficking but was not prosecuted. Kassar then moved to England, where he lived in a flat in Sloane Square, London, and resumed his dealings, not only of cannabis but also of heroin. In early 1972, a Lebanese dealer in cannabis and heroin asked Kassar if he could help a rebel group in Lebanon find some guns and ammunition. After weeks of contacting people who knew his father to find a supplier, Kassar said yes. The first shipment to the Lebanese group included 400 AK-47s, 100 RPGs, and 200 grenades that Kassar ordered from Poland through the Black September organization. This is the same organization that caused the massacre at the 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich, Germany, killing 11 Jewish athletes and coaches. Also in this year, a figure in Yemen asked Kassar to buy some rifles and pistols. It is unclear whether that figure was related to the Yemeni government or not. But in 1980, Kassar became Yemen's commercial attaché in Poland. In 1988, just over 30 minutes after takeoff, a Pan Am passenger plane exploded in the sky over Lockerbie, Scotland, while en route from London, England to New York, USA. All 243 passengers, 16 crew members and 11 people on the ground were killed when debris fell on the town of Lockerbie. Most of the passengers and crew were American citizens. Investigations showed that the perpetrator of this terrorist bombing was Abdel Basti al-Megrahi, a Libyan intelligence officer, and the explosives to make the bomb were provided by Kassar. However, due to insufficient evidence, he was acquitted, and Abdel Basti al-Megrahi was sentenced to 27 years in prison and died of cancer in May 2012. After his spectacular success, Kassar officially entered the black market weapons market and became known as the Prince of Marbella, where his castle in Spain is located. In the 15-room castle, you can see pictures of him with Uday Hussein, son of Saddam Hussein, Hassan Aid, son of Somali leader Farah Aid, Mustafa Tlass, former Syrian defense minister, and former Palestine Liberation Front leader Abu Abbas. The shocking cases. One of the cases directly related to Kassar occurred in October 1985. At that time, four members of the Palestine Liberation Front, PLF, hijacked the Italian cruise ship Achille Lauro and took dozens of hostages while it was anchored in Egypt to force Israel to release all imprisoned PLF members. When Israel refused, the hijackers shot and killed Leon Klinghoffer, an American Jew who was in a wheelchair after a stroke, and threw his body into the sea as a warning. After several negotiations through Egyptian intermediaries, the 4 PLF members agreed to release the ship and the hostages. In return, they requested a plane to fly to Tunisia, but when they entered Italian airspace, 2 American fighter jets intercepted the plane, forcing it to land at Milan airport. Arrested and brought to trial, all 4 members claimed that Kassar was the one who supplied the weapons and planned the hijacking. However, due to insufficient evidence, Kassar was released after nearly a year in detention. Hearing this, Abu Abbas, then the leader of the PLF, said, "No one can call him a terrorist. He is a hero in the eyes of the Arabs. I will not allow anyone to call Kassar a terrorist." In 1986, a French court sentenced Kassar in absentia to 8 years in prison for supplying weapons to the PLF to assassinate Israeli officials in Europe. A 20-year-old French woman, Marie Poul, was an intelligence officer of the French security service and was planted in the PLF. During a meeting with Kassar on the Champs-Élysées in Paris, a person accompanying Kassar slipped a suitcase into Marie Poul's hand. When he returned home, Kassar called the girl and gave her the combination to open the suitcase, which contained 5 pistols, 2 silencers, and 10 magazines. In 1987, Kassar earned £1,500,000 from selling weapons to the Nicaraguan Contras, which was also the cause of the Iran-Contras affair. At this time, US President Reagan gave the green light to secret arms sales to Iran because after the Iran-Iraq War, the US Congress had approved a ban on arms sales to Iran. The money from selling weapons to Iran was transferred to the counter-revolutionary Contras in Nicaragua to rescue American hostages held in Lebanon. In 1992, Kassar once again made tens of millions of dollars through arms sales to Croatia, Bosnia, and Somalia, which violated the UN Security Council resolution on arms embargoes against those 3 countries. Not to mention that Kassar also sold weapons to Chad, Guatemala, Iran, Lebanon, Sri Lanka, Syria, and Yemen. To ensure his own safety, by contacting former Argentine President Carlos Menem, Kassar obtained a passport, proving that he was an Argentine citizen. Prosecutors at the Hague International Court of Justice said, "It is very difficult to find a criminal record for Monzer al-Kassar in any country," while Kassar said calmly, "Where there is money, there is me. In business, I have met very interesting people, both good and bad. But how do you know who is good and who is bad? It is a matter of perspective. A bad person to you can be a good person to me. So, don't say I am bad because I hang out with bad people." Also in this year, luck smiled on Kassar once again. In Spain, Judge Garzón, who led the investigation into the terrorist activities of the Basque separatist group, ETA, found evidence to convict Kassar of selling weapons to this group. However, before the opening of the trial of an ETA member in Madrid, 3 witnesses who agreed to provide evidence against Kassar died from a fall from the 4th floor. 1 died in a car accident, and the 3rd suddenly disappeared. After the overthrow of Iraqi President Saddam Hussein, the new government in Iraq issued a red notice for Kassar because he had previously sold weapons to Saddam Hussein's Republican Guard. However, not only did Kassar not give up, he continued to sell guns and ammunition to anti-government rebels in Iraq. Iraqi National Security Advisor Moaffaq al-Rubaii called Kassar one of the main sources of funding for the Iraqi insurgents, and Iraq has sufficient evidence of Kassar's actions. At that time, one of the key figures leading the insurgent groups in Iraq was Sabawi Ibrahim al-Hassan Ali Takriti, Saddam Hussein's cousin. Under Saddam, he was the commander of the Iraqi intelligence service and also a close friend of Kassar. When Saddam Hussein was overthrown, Sabawi was ranked 5th on the new Iraqi government's wanted list. In early April 2005, the United Nations ordered the confiscation of the assets of Sabawi and his 6 sons for providing financial support to elements of the old regime, insurgent groups to organize attacks against the Iraqi government and the US-led coalition. In May 2005, Interpol, at the request of the Iraqi government, arrested Bashar Sabawi, 36, son of Sabawi Ibrahim al-Hassan Ali Takriti, at Beirut Airport, Lebanon, as he was preparing to board a plane to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, with the help of Kassar. During interrogation, Kassar said he knew nothing about Bashar Sabawi and that he only did it for money. Kassar said, "I met him at a restaurant in Beirut, Lebanon. He introduced himself as Ali Abdullah Zafar. He was a polite, educated man and we quickly became friends. I swear to God, how did I know you were Bashar Sabawi? But on the other hand, Kassar bribed some Lebanese officials to help Bashar Sabawi avoid extradition to Iraq. After only 8 years of arms trafficking, by 1980, Kassar's fortune was estimated at $26 billion, and he was considered one of the richest men in the world. From the beginning, Kassar flaunted his wealth. He lived lavishly, wore designer clothes, drove expensive cars, lived in a castle in Marbella, Spain, and owned real estate in many countries. All of this earned him the arrogant nickname Peacock. DEA agents considered Kassar a global criminal and one of the top 5 arms suppliers in the world. A dangerous criminal, he was always cautious and almost derailed the entire investigation of law enforcement. Kassar remained elusive until 2007, when the DEA staged an elaborate and thorough operation to arrest him. Decades ago, capturing an elusive international criminal like Kassar, who had ties to multiple countries, was extremely difficult for law enforcement. But after the horrific terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, U.S. law changed to allow suspects who were hiding and operating abroad to be arrested and prosecuted in federal court. This paved the way for the DEA to build a plan to capture Kassar in 2006. As with the arrest of the Merchant of Death Viktor Anatolyevich Bout. In 2006, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, set up a trap codenamed Operation Legacy, carried out by the DEA's Special Operations Division under the command of Jim Soils. After hooking up with a former member of the Black September organization, alias Samir, and through several contacts, Kassar finally agreed to meet Samir in December 2006 in Beirut, Lebanon. In February 2007, in a meeting between Samir and Kassar, this time with 2 Guatemalans posing as members of the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, looking to buy weapons to fight the Americans in Colombia. After several contacts to agree on the terms of the contract, Kassar agreed to sell the FARC 15 shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles, 4,000 grenades, 9,000 AK rifles and ammunition, and 300 kilograms of C4 explosives. In return, the FARC paid Kassar $15 million worth of cocaine. All of these contacts were secretly filmed by the DEA. Next, the DEA asked the fake FARC group to convince Kassar to go to Romania to receive the drugs. As planned, with the consent of the Romanian government, the DEA would arrest Kassar in Bucharest, the capital of Romania, but he refused because it was very difficult to find the means and route to transport cocaine out of Romania. Not giving up, on June 3, 2007, the DEA directed the fake FARC group to convince Kassar to go to Madrid, Spain. This time he agreed because that was where his Marbella castle was located. The meeting was arranged at Madrid International Airport. Kassar agreed because he thought this place would be easy to escape in case of trouble. The Spanish police, along with DEA agents, spread out their forces throughout the airport, ready for the arrest. However, right after Kassar landed at the airport terminal, the DEA agents suddenly lost track of the subject. After a few minutes of gunfire, the agents breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Kassar emerge from the airport restroom. Immediately, the police force closed in, restrained and handcuffed Kassar. They quickly transferred Kassar to a jet arranged by the DEA and flew back to the United States. On June 13, 2007, Kassar was extradited to the United States. On November 20, 2008, Kassar was sentenced by the U.S. federal court to 30 years in prison, with all assets confiscated for the crimes as mentioned above. He should have been sentenced to life in prison, but in court, Kassar's lawyer presented evidence that he had repeatedly provided the Spanish government with counterterrorism intelligence. Kassar's so-called counterterrorism intelligence is really just a competitive ploy by Kassar to take down other black market arms dealers so he can gain a monopoly, said Jim Soils, head of Operation Legacy. Kassar, 79, is serving his sentence at a federal prison in Marion, Illinois, about 300 miles from Chicago. He cannot be released until 2033, when he will be 88.